Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today's video and Blind Woman Recommends. So, I just realized I have not said my usual thing about stories and other random things taking center stage. But anyway, we're back with my last few recommendations for after Girls of Paper and Fire. So if you haven't seen the first part, I'll be linking the playlist where I have Girls of Paper and Fire reviews as well as the first recommendations. So I'll be linking that below, as well as any other content you might be interested in. Basically the rest of my series. So without further ado, let's begin with number 14, and that is Yu-Gi-Oh! So Yu-Gi-Oh! Follows, I'm talking about the original Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm not talking about Yu-Gi-Oh! GX or 5Ds, though I do want to watch those at some point. Anywho, Yu-Gi-Oh! Follows our main character Yugi Moto, who basically ends up through certain circumstances defeating the Duel Monsters world champion Seto Kaiba, and attracts the attention of the game's creator, Pegasus, who then challenges him to a shadow game, and with a 15-minute timer, but if he does not win, he loses his grandfather's soul. Long story short, Yugi loses, and his grandfather's soul is taken by Pegasus, and he now has to enter the Pegasus's tournament in order to win back his grandfather's soul. That's like the basic premise of the original. But so much more happens, like there's a bigger overarching plot, but like that is the basic summary. My next recommendation is Naruto. I love Naruto. But basically, we follow our main character Naruto, who is basically like an outcast in his society, because he is the host to the nine-tailed fox, who 12 years before the story basically kind of like destroyed their village. But in order to save the village, the current leader, known as the Hokage, the current leader at the time, because he did die for this, but basically he sealed the nine-tailed fox in Naruto, who at the time was a newborn baby. So he basically just like sealed the nine-tailed fox in there and made Naruto its host, but also an outcast of it. He ends up finding out, and Naruto, though, because he's been an outcast his whole life, has this one goal, and that is to become Hokage, so that people would finally respect him and look up to him. And we kind of follow him on his journey as he learns from his missions, among other things, and we basically follow him as it pursues the dream of being Hokage. It's one of those series that is kind of a classic gem, but it's one of those series that you find that that I feel like are very important, that shares a really important story. It's one of those series that you don't even realize that you're looking for until you watch it. I know that's hard to believe, but I promise you, that is exactly what that feels like when I watched it. It's one of those series that you're just like, I needed this story, but I didn't know I needed it. Anyway, my next two recommendations also follow that Naruto trend, where it's like the story that you didn't know you needed until you got it. And the next one is The Rising of the Shield Hero. This is still ongoing, but one season is already out. But we follow our main character Naofumi, who goes into the library looking for a book, and he finds this book about these four heroes: the sword, the shield, the spear, and the bow hero. But when he's reading the book, there's nothing about the shield hero. And when he's trying to find out more, he gets summoned along with 3 other men from 3 different versions of Japan, and they're summoned to this world, and they are asked to basically save this world from the waves. when they're about to leave for the adventure, there is no companion. There's no, basically no one is willing to go with Naofumi, who ends up becoming the shield hero, because they see him as like less than, almost like a loser, because he doesn't know anything about their world. And he basically ends up going with this one person who's the only person that decided to go, and her name is Mine, and then he goes with her. However, it turns out that she ends up accusing him of a crime that he did not commit, and everything, like all his support, all his income, all of that stuff basically gets taken away, and now he has to find a way to survive on his own in this world he barely knows. So that's that. So 17, my next recommendation is Violet Evergarden. This one is so cute and so sad. I love this one. Violet Evergarden follows our main character, Violet, who is, by the way, I'm trying to speak really slow because I'm pretty sure people are sleeping right now, so I don't want to wake anybody up. But basically, Violet is someone who was who was basically at the war. She was basically like a weapon of the war, and she is emotionless. Like, she doesn't understand emotions. She doesn't understand any of that. But when the war is over, she needs to find a new purpose, and she decides to become an auto memory doll, which is basically kind of like scribes. These people basically write letters for other people, and she is trying to figure out the one thing that her master, not her master, I'm sorry, her the major, her superior basically said to her, and it was like the last words he said to her were, "I love you," and she's trying to figure out the meaning of that. So we follow her through her emotional journey as she meets different people and learns about different emotions, and also starts to understand her own, which, oh my gosh, this is basically anime therapy. This is literal therapy. Watching this series was therapy. The next thing I want to recommend is Fruits Basket. So Fruits Basket has an original 2001 version, like there's the original, and then there is the reboot. The original is great, and the reboot is also is great too. It's actually much better because the reboot basically connects the story more to the manga. It just adapts the manga in 3 seasons, and it's just like so well done. But whichever one you watch, it doesn't matter because you're going to be watching a great story either way. But the oh, and by the way, I'm looking at this now. I'm wrong. I'm recommending 13 more things, not 12. But anyway, we basically follow Toru Honda, who for a while is living in a tent because her grandfather's house is being renovated, and both of her parents died. Her father dying when she was like 3, and then her mother dying pretty recently, so she's basically on her own. Due to a set of circumstances, she ends up in the Soma house, and she ends up finding out a pretty big secret, and that is that 13 members of the Soma family are cursed, and basically when they are hugged by the opposite sex, they become one of the Chinese zodiac animals. So she has to kind of keep the secret, but also figure out other secrets that are lurking in the family. It's a very wholesome story. It will make you laugh, it's going to make you cry, and it's just going to make you feel all the emotions, kind of like Violet Evergarden. The next one I want to recommend is Ouran High School Host Club. So we follow another one I've talked about at length, and also will be recommending, but that we follow Haruhi Fujioka. She is looking for a quiet place to study and ends up stumbling across Music Room 3, and in turn the Host Club, who basically is a group of rich guys or wealthy guys who entertain basically they're basically the most handsomest guys in the school. They entertain, um, and they have a lot of time in their hands, and they entertain a bunch of young ladies who also have way too much time in their hands, and basically that's basically their whole thing. Um, and Haruhi, however, accidentally breaks an 8 million yen vase that they were planning to sell. 8 million yen is equivalent to about $76,000. If you want to look at it like US currency, it's about $76,000. So now she has to work as their errand boy to end up paying the debt. And she very soon ends up rising to as a host. However, they end up discovering one thing. Haruhi is a girl. So now they have to basically try to keep the secret that she's a girl and try to keep her from getting out. Although Haruhi doesn't care, she's like, she doesn't care how they see her. She's like, it's just a gender, like it's just a biological sex or whatever. Like she doesn't care, and she is amazing. The next thing I want to recommend is Aggretsuko. Now, Aggretsuko is an odd recommendation for this, but it's interesting, and I think it fits the prompt. But we follow Retsuko. Oh, by the way, Aggretsuko kind of stands for aggressive Retsuko. And she basically is an accountant, and she works really, really, really hard in this company, only to one thing I want to mention in this anime, these people are basically, they're all animals. They're all kind of some form of, like, they're basically anthropomorphic animals, I guess you could say. Because there's like a bird secretary, Aggretsuko is panda, or Retsuko's panda, her boss is basically a pig, so these are all animals, technically, right? And basically she ends up working in this company, working really hard, but nothing is resulting the way she thought it would be. In order to relieve her stress, she basically sings metal. She basically sings heavy metal. It's just awesome. It's really good. It's hard to explain, but we kind of watch her go through her daily life. Like, these episodes are really short. They're between 15 and 24 minutes, 15 and 25, but they're really short. It's short to watch, but each of these episodes kind of follows her on her daily life as she changes, and as she basically kind of figures out life and all the things that go with it. The next thing I want to recommend is Winx Club. So, Winx Club, we follow our main character, Bloom, who ends up stumbling by accident into this fairy named Stella, and she ends up saving her life with magic she didn't know she had, and ends up going, after some convincing to her parents, to Althea School of Magic with Stella. And there, she ends up meeting a couple of other friends, and they end up forming the Winx Club, which is basically what their group looks like. And in the meantime, Bloom is trying to figure out who her birth parents are, as well as figuring out, basically everything that other things that are coming into school, like their new villains, and going through some rivalries, but also making friends, as well as trying to figure out who her birth parents were and what happened to them. So that is like the basic plot. It has changed since then a little bit, but it's interesting. The next thing I want to recommend is Shira and the Princesses of Power. I know there used to be like an older 80s cartoon. I think it was called Shira, but I'm recommending the reboot because that is the only one I know of. So yeah, Shira and the Princess of Power follows Adora, who is part of this the Horde, which is basically kind of like an empire type or so, and they basically just want to conquer this planet that they are in. And she believes that they're doing the right thing, trying to bring order, but certain circumstances prove that she's wrong. So she ends up defecting, and joining the rebellion, and she ends up starting to form the Princess Alliance in order to defeat the Horde. And she also learns a little bit more about life itself because she was kind of sheltered. So yeah. So the next thing I want to recommend is the Dragon Prince. The Dragon Prince follows these three characters, Rayla, Callum, and Ezra, and basically they are on a quest to return this dragon egg to its mother, because he's basically like the Dragon Prince, and basically the humans and elves and dragons have been on a war for a couple of years after some things were done. And one of the last things they did, the more recent one, was take the dragon egg, which basically was a pretty big violation. And when that happens, when that happened though, they thought that the dragon egg was destroyed, but then they find it, and then they decide to return the dragon egg in order to try to get some peace between the humans and elves and dragons. So, yeah, and Rayla is an elven assassin. Love her. The next two things I want to recommend are in the same franchise, and that is Avatar: The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra, which is its sequel. Avatar: The Last Airbender follows Aang, who has been in an iceberg for 10 years, and we find out pretty quickly that he's the Avatar, and he now who is basically a being or someone. I wouldn't say a being, a person that can basically master all four elements, and he can basically master all four elements. He's the only one that can do that. However, he now has to go on this journey to try to learn the elements and try to learn them before summer ends, because by the end of summer, Sozin's comet, which is a really powerful object, will end up arriving and giving the firebenders a lot of power, enough to destroy the world. Basically, the Fire Nation is at war with pretty much every other nation in order to control the world, or like gain power and conquer them, basically. So he has to learn it before that arrives and defeat the Fire Lord. So we follow his journey and all the fun stuff. The Legend of Kora follows the new Avatar Korra, as she is basically navigating her new position as the Avatar. She kind of knew it when she was a kid, but now she's actually doing it. So we kind of follow her as she navigates she basically navigates actually being the Avatar. And the last but not least, I want to recommend is Lucifer. Lucifer is about the king of hell. He basically is tired of ruling hell and ends up deciding to take a vacation in Los Angeles and ends up opening a nightclub. And from there, he ends up meeting Detective Chloe. I forgot her Chloe Decker, and he ends up assisting her in her homicide investigations. And there is so much more, but I don't want to explain the rest of it. Anyway, those are all my recommendations. Let me know if you have any more recommendations. Again, the previous videos I've done on this series will be linked below, and I will see you in my next video, where I will be starting on the Camelot Rising trilogy reviews. That will be next week. Next week will all be about that series. So I'll be reviewing that, and then the next week will be Aurora Burning, I believe. I don't know. Maybe it will all depend on my videos. I don't know what's gonna be next week, but at least it might end up being the Camelot Rising trilogy or Ash Princess. I haven't decided. Because it'll depend on I mentioned all my videos are kind of being pushed back, so it'll all depend on what is that called? Basically on on what's coming out, because there are 2 books coming out in February, and I want to do specific content for those 2 weeks. So for those weeks, and then move on to everything else. So some things might be pushed off a little bit. I guess we'll see. Anyway, until my next video, consume stories. Bye.